Welcome back. We're incredible. George Soros and Conway Core is at it again, just having some technical difficulties. We're laughing because today's just started off on the wrong foot all the way around with the podcast. We're an hour late getting started. And just, the typical. But welcome back. We've been gone for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I guess. It's to be expected. 2 weeks for Christmas and New Year's, and then we had a snowstorm while the West Coast was having a fire blaze, and not making light. It's just what it is. And but welcome back, Michael. Say hello.
Hey, I'm glad to be here with y'all. Glad to have you join us. Just happy to be able to do this again.
It is good to be back, and that is, if we have any problems, just trust me, it's not on our end. It is on Conway Core, and if I wind up dead in a ditch, it wasn't suicide. Just a lot of stuff going on. Tomorrow is Monday is the inauguration. We swear in 45, who has now been 47. Kind of looking forward to, I am looking forward to that. Not putting all my faith in him. Faith's ultimately in God, but am looking forward to, the long, dark winter that Biden told us about being over.
Yes. Having some lower prices.
Yeah. I mean, just go to the grocery store, go to the gas station, and your paycheck's pretty much gone. Everybody I'm talking to, a lot of them are working 2, some of them 3 jobs. And then I read where the California fire victims got the same amount. They got their $770. And some of those houses, you can't even buy a square of grass to put in your yard for that.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. But we're sending, how many more millions to Ukraine?
Yeah.
Like, why can't we keep that money here for people who need it?
Well, that's another issue. Of course, also, too, tomorrow, TikTok is supposed to go away. I'm kind of curious. Do you think that's going to happen? Or because, Trump's one of his biggest campaign promises. Yeah. Of course, a lot of there was some kids I heard that they were talking to me about it, and these kids are like 6th, 7th grade. They can't vote, but they were talking about Trump promises that TikTok wasn't. So I'm saying that because that was actually an issue that mattered to people, and he promised that TikTok wasn't going to go away, and now the Supreme Court has upheld that decision. I've got a really good friend who thinks that that they're going to find something. Trump cannot buy it because he'll be president. But I kind of wondered, there's going to be somebody maybe come through and buy it.
Well, I would look and see if the price bottomed out. And then if I was Elon, I'd buy it too.
If the price bottoms out, go put stock in it.
Yeah, because
as soon as it bottoms out,
someone will buy it.
Yeah, because it's going to go somewhere. I mean, it's too huge of a platform. Too many people listen to it or look at it. Too many people are on it. You don't just let stuff like that go. And but anyway, I mean, I was kind of looking at one of the things that we were wanting to talk about. Let me get back to it. What we were talking about is this is according to Fox News. So take it what it's worth. Not a huge Fox Newsy here, but I think this is probably pretty reliable. It says Newsom suspends California environmental law to eliminate roadblocks for wildfire victims rebuilding homes. Let's talk about some of those environmental laws. One of the reasons why that place is such a tinderbox is because the foliage laying on the ground, people are not allowed to gather that up and burn it, which when you get a wildfire like they do now.
Which is why it spreads so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly That's exactly what they're dealing with. Is, I mean, all of this stuff is just continuing, and you're looking at dead, dry, rotted wood, some of which case you don't even have to destroy it. There's things that you can use that for. But they don't. They don't. So it's just really getting out of hand. But I being that we are more of a Christian oriented, I should say, we're more Christ oriented podcast. Not exactly. I mean, we're more Christ oriented, more ministry oriented. There are things we talked about it this morning in the men's meeting. There are things that when you look at it, you kind of see a spiritual awakening kind of happening. One with TikTok, because we had mentioned, the research shows that people are not going to church like they used to, but Gen Zers are buying Bibles left and right, so that's a good sign. The other is when you start seeing extremely liberal governors like Newsom going, hey, we've got to suspend these environmental laws. Now, you go, well, what significance does that have? Well, the significance that has is that one of the reasons we have such environmental laws is because we should take care of our planet. We should. But when people start moving away from God, they have to replace that with something else. And typically, go all the way through the Bible, through history, what you find is the thing that people replace it with is really the Bible tells us that they worship the creation rather than the Creator.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. They, especially in areas like that where the left is so prevalent, they have moved away from God, and they find other things to put on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the things that they are so, I don't know what the best word, they feel that they are conscientious about. I find that, in my personal opinion, a lot of times they'll end up doing more harm than good.
The laws?
Yes.
Well, yeah, because that's one of the things that they cite here. The concerns that environmental protection efforts might delay reconstruction in the coastal area. Environmental laws that could have posed obstacles to rebuilding structures destroyed by the Southern California wildfires will be temporarily suspended. Housing along the scenic Pacific Coast Highway in California burned down in a monstrous fire that destroyed more than 10,000 homes and structures beginning on January 7th. And do you remember what it was? Because we read how many...
40,696 acres.
And as of right now, they don't even have it. I don't even think close to being under... it's 40,300 acres. What did you say that?
Okay, so there are 640 acres in a square mile. So if you work it out, it's just over 63 square miles have been burned.
Yeah, and if you don't, that may not, that rings a bell with a lot of people, but if it doesn't, then you've never been out west. I mean, the landmass out there is so huge. I mean, you can just look at it. You can look at a map of the United States and see, the country starts off and then it just kind of gradually goes. And so out there, it's significant. It's devastating anywhere. But out there, it's so devastating because, the land out there, number one, is so expensive. And number two, you don't just rebuild when something has been destroyed. Now, to kind of get to the point of why we're talking about this, because we're not just talking about wildfires that break out in California. It was brought up to me I think it was the night before the fire started. They were having the Golden Globe Awards, and the woman refers to L.A. as a godless town, and it was in a comedic sort of way. It was almost really a mockery. I would say it was a mockery. I don't want to put words in her mouth. I believe it was a mockery. But
was that when they were saying, "We've got 11 thank yous to family and friends"?
Yes.
Blah blah blah.
3 to mother, soccer moms, and God 0.
Yeah.
And then she said, "What else do you expect from this godless town?" Now, that joke could be taken a couple of ways. One is a mockery. The other is she is kind of mocking L.A. because L.A. has been and is a godless town. Could be taken that way. But some people think, well, did God start the fire? Look, no. God doesn't start fires. He doesn't do things to get back at people. The truth is God is a gracious God. He's a merciful God. But what does happen, and I'm going to get into it in here in just a minute, but what does happen is we open ourselves up. And the further we go into our sin, the further we go into our belligerent walking away from God, we open ourselves up.
Yeah, well, the further they fall away, the less protection they have. Mm-hmm. Even if you're saved, you're going to face tribulation. The difference is God will give you an escape route. But, the people saying that God started the fires there, I would look at Sodom and Gomorrah, because Abraham goes to God and said, but if there are 50 righteous, will you destroy the city? And he whittles it down. There are still, there may not be as many as we would like, but there are still righteous people who live there. And that's why I believe that God would not purposefully destroy it. He won't destroy the righteous with the wicked.
No. Romans chapter 2 and verse 5 says this, but because of your hard and unrepentant hearts, let's look at that just a minute. Read that one more time. But because of your hard and unrepentant heart, not what God's doing, but it's because of ours. It says you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of wrath, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. A lot of times, what people don't understand, when you get things kind of like what's going on in California, that isn't God's wrath, that's God's mercy. God's wrath and mercy can be intertwined. They're so closely connected. Because you take, look at what happened at the Tower of Babel when God confused the language. That God said, let's go down and confuse their language, unless they accomplish what they've set in their heart to do. And really, he goes on to say that, paraphrasing here, but they're going to destroy themselves in the process. The longer a person lives and continues going on in their sin, the more, just as he said, you're storing up wrath against yourself for the day of wrath.
Yeah, well, if you want to equate it to us as humans, if you break a minor law, there's a minor punishment.
Yeah.
But the more, let's say you start committing severe felonies, that time adds up.
Yeah.
That's why you see these people with multiple life sentences. Like you keep accumulating that debt. And that's exactly what God's talking about.
Yeah, and you're right, and and I think we've got to be careful as the church and as believers. We have to be careful that what we're not doing is, they're getting what they deserve. But yes, I do believe God's trying to get their attention through it, and and with all the other stuff going on, I'm praying that somehow, that somebody is able to get them to realize, hey, the devastation and unfortunately the loss of life is not God pouring out, to get even, because God's not trying to get even. You go to Romans chapter 1, and he says in verse 18, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. For what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from his workmanship, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking and darkened in their foolish hearts. He's saying it's on us. When things start happening, it's on us.
Well, people always say, how could a good and loving God put people in hell?
Yeah.
He doesn't. You put yourself there.
Yeah.
It's by your own choices.
Yeah.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
It is your unrighteousness or your willingness to break God's laws that place you in that predicament.
Mm-hmm. He goes on in verse 22, says, although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images of mortal man and birds, animals, and reptiles. Now, I don't want to put anything in the writer of Romans' mouth here, but that sounds an awful lot like furries. Because I'm not saying that's what he's referring to here, but I saw something the other day about all this, and when we decide that we're not going to serve the God of creation and the one that we were created in his image, then what happens here is that we start to try to create ourselves in the image that we want to be in. Now, we talked about this again. We talked about that this morning in the men's meeting. A lot of people are all talking about mental health issues. When you look at what's going on in this first chapter of Romans, the judgment of God, understand when I say not everyone dealing with health issues or mental health issues are under the judgment of God. I'm not saying that, but a lot of times when we go against what God's word says, we create those mental health issues.
Well, we create a void that has no other, nothing that can fill it but God.
Yeah.
And as we separate ourselves, that's where anxiety and depression start to skyrocket.
Yes.
You don't have that safety and that assurance that no matter what you face, God will get you through.
That's right.
And so, the writer of Romans says, putting your faith in man, you're misplacing your faith. And all that will do is if you place your faith in me or in Thomas or any other human, eventually you'll be let down.
That's right.
We are fallible. We will not keep the standard, no matter how hard we try, that God has set. That's why you have to ultimately place your faith in him. And it's not that I can't rely on you. Like if I need help, I know that this church will help me. But ultimately, that's not where my faith lies. And that is the mistake that a lot of people are making. And they also put more faith in themselves than they deserve.
Yeah.
If you could get through this life on your own, there would be no need for God. There would be no need for a relationship with him. And we simply cannot do it on our own.
Well, it was Thomas Jefferson, I believe, who said that our form of government is made of greed. And I'm paraphrasing what he said there, but kind of along those lines. And I saw something on TV today. It was a show made for kids. Of course, I agreed with what they were saying, and in that you cannot be a help to someone else unless first you help yourself. That's where the old saying comes from. It's not in the Bible, But it is the old saying, God helps those who help themselves. And you can't help someone unless first you do. If you want to be the kind of person who gives to charity, you can't give to charity without money. So you got to do something to try to create money. But the problem with that is many times our society has went so far into that. We've heard the term, you can't help someone drowning until you put on your own oxygen mask. And that is true. But at the same time, if you are a person given to self, such as the writer of Romans here is talking about, even your attempt, and if you're helping people, great, but even your attempt to helping people, a lot of times the motives can be wrong. And look, if you're helping people, I don't care what your motives are, you're helping people. But, well, like I do, but if you're not a believer. But what he's saying here is that people have so gotten to the point that they seek after their own self gratification, if you will, and that's what when I saw the video of the woman saying that shouldn't come as a shock in this godless town. I think in the 1930s or 40s, there was a book called Hollywood Cesspool. And even as far back as then, almost 100 years ago, even as far as back then, the guy was talking about all of the stuff that goes on in Hollywood that's just completely and totally, just decadent.
Yeah, abhorrent.
Yeah.
And the cycle just continues.
Yeah.
Like the old saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And so they've perpetuated that atmosphere in Hollywood.
Yeah. They have. And, there's all these stories about, child sexual abuse and different things that people have done just to try to make it. And that's really what, we see that because as people start to, I don't remember who it was, but he said, if you want to know one of the reasons why all these athletes and celebrities get so messed up is because we're made to worship. We're not made to be worshiped. And I thought, man, that's a very profound statement. We've got it completely reversed. And he says, although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images of mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. And so I don't think you can ping Hollywood any more than you can the rest of the nation. But I do think that there is a shift in this country to go back more towards conservative Judeo-Christian values. And I think that the election proved that.
Yeah, made it clear.
Yeah.
That was the intention. This country is like a political pendulum.
Yeah.
It swings one way.
Yeah.
And, people get tired, they go the other.
Yeah.
But this is a distinct shift in political atmosphere.
Yeah. You're right. And I think that, going on though, I kind of want to look at something here. In verse 24, it says, therefore, God gave them over in the desires of their hearts to impurity for the dishonoring of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is forever worthy of praise. Amen. It's funny because people want to say, well, I don't believe in God. The psalmist says that The fool has said in his heart there is no God. And even Anton LaVey, the founder of the Satanic Church, realized that when I don't remember who it was, but he was in an interview and he said, I know what the scriptures say. He said, you're going to ask me if I believe in the devil. He said, well, no. He said, I don't, because I don't believe in God. He said, I believe, he said, I know what the scriptures say. And he said, what got Satan kicked out of heaven? Satan wanted to be God. He said, that's the reason we call ourselves the Satanic Church, because we place ourselves at the center of our little universe. He said, it's human nature. And he was right. It is human nature.
Yeah, but wasn't he the same person who on his deathbed said, oh no, something's wrong, something's terribly wrong? Those were the last words he uttered.
I've heard his girlfriend, Blanche, what was her last name? She said that wasn't true. I don't know. But I've heard different accounts say that's what he did. I think, but again, really, you can't blame. The Bible tells us to let every man work out his own soul salvation with fear and trembling. And when you kind of read his life, again, the Satanic Bible was really just his manifesto. It was his core beliefs, his values, if you will. And one of the things he talked about is how that he would play the organ for certain tent evangelists, but he also played organ for a circus. And he said, I'd play organ during the day for the circus, and he said, I'd play for night for the tent evangelists. And he said, some of the same people that that I saw come into the tent services, he said the very next day they would be getting and hooking up with the women at the circus. So, basically what he said is that it was a lot of the hypocrisy that cost him. And that is, just in case you don't know, when the Bible says, take not the Lord's name in vain, to not take the Lord's name in vain, he says, you will not be held guiltless. That's what it's talking about, is, where the scripture says that you profess me with your mouth, but your heart is far from me. And that Romans lays this out perfectly where we are. And I don't want to get off course, but that is, when you look at certain things, they're thinking that it was an individual who set the fire. Well, why did they do it? Is this a situation where they're going to find somebody, they're going to arrest them, and we're going to get some info on why this guy set the fire? My guess is the media might spin it that it's some radical right-wing, MAGA supporting Christian is going to be my guess how they're going to do it. But I think, go ahead.
That's what they do in every major situation. And then the information comes out that was not the case. Yeah. And they very quietly retract that. But I don't
if they ever retract it.
Yeah.
Because, there's been a few things they've never retracted, like when they tried to say that the shooter of the Arizona was a congresswoman who got shot. She lived. But they've never retracted that was not a Republican. Not really, not publicly. They have in their roundabout ways. But I think that when if you get down to the number one, it's demonic. I mean, you're going to go and you're going to do things that is going to destroy people's. And I get that there have been times in history where things like that have kind of happened as a protest. But I think when they get to the root of this and they find that person who did set the fire, and they get to the root of it, what we're going to find is probably somebody who is deeply mentally and most importantly spiritually disturbed. And I think that we have to look at that and go, okay, if that is what's causing it, then what is the fix?
Yeah. No doubt whoever set the fires is disturbed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you read earlier that 10,000 homes had burned.
Yeah.
Regardless if that was a shanty,
Yeah.
you know, that's still someone's home.
Yeah.
10,000.
Yeah.
It's not just the Hollywood elite that are losing their homes,
No.
you know, and regardless, that's still, I mean, think about that 10,000 homes. That's hugely significant.
Yeah.
That even if they're rich, they now have to find somewhere else to live. Like, that has an abrupt impact. Like, I don't live in the nicest home.
Yeah.
It's certainly not the worst, but I cannot imagine losing everything and having to pack up
And go
you know,
try to
like-
start over.
and we are certainly not destitute. But yes, you know, and then the slap in the face is, you know, here comes the government and here's your $750.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. You know, and you would think that I don't know what it is about this administration. It's not Joe Biden doing this. He's not there to do this kind of stuff. But I don't know what it is about this administration that's handing people 700. Like there, at this point, it is a belligerent smack in the face.
It's salt in the wound.
Because California voted for you, and L.A. voted for you.
Well, I want to be careful with how I say it, but this is one of those instances where you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
You wanted these kinds of politicians. Well, this is how they value you.
It's how they value you, and you know you're going. The other money that you would have got is going to fight some war. It's really going to pay for some guy's lifestyle, and who is creating a 21st century military off of your money.
Yeah, I mean, well over $250 million.
Yeah.
You know, if you take all the people who are affected by the hurricanes and the fires, if you would have given them that money, they could rebuild.
Yeah.
They will never get those sentimental items back. You know, the old family pictures or, you know, the other things that have been passed down.
That's right.
But you could give them some semblance of normalcy.
That's
like
right.
Get them back closer. I mean, what $700? I mean, that won't even get you a nice hotel for an extended period.
No.
You know,
It won't. And you're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, what if you have pets? You know, like they've left these people high and dry, and in the
But they did it in the Carolinas.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like from coast to coast, they have let people down. But this, I hope, opens people's eyes to the. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it, but the priorities of your federal government are not to look after you. They're more concerned with what's going on, you know, halfway around the globe. And they'll let this country literally burn while they're funding a war that we have no interest in.
Well, and I think the next several verses kind of cover a lot of what you just said. He says in verse 26, "For this reason God gave them over to dishonorable passions. Even their women exchanged natural relations for unnatural ones. Likewise, the men abandoned natural relations with women and burned with lust for one another. Men committed indecent acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their error." Of course, we know. I mean, that's talking about that is talking about the gay lifestyle. That's what he's talking about there. Verse 28 says, "Furthermore, since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, he gave them up to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent new forms of evil. They disobey their parents. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, merciless. And that's exactly what we're seeing right there. Heartlessness and mercilessness.
Yeah. Yeah, they would rather fund death and destruction than life and growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, no. It's just like with the funding of abortion. Instead of trying to find a way to allow babies to live, we'll send millions of dollars to kill them.
Yeah.
Like, there is no sanctity of life within certain circles. They just have no value for it.
No, they don't. And that's what he's talking about right there. And when you read just those verses that we just read, what you see is that once God turns people, and you'll read this once you get into Revelation, once God has turned people over to themselves, that's probably the worst thing he can do while he's still alive. I mean, there's, because, Jesus does tell us, he says, fear not the one who can destroy the body and after that do nothing. He said, rather I tell you to fear the one who after destroy the body can also destroy the soul and cast them both into eternal hell. So God can do far more than this, but while people are still on this earth, this is the worst thing he can do while people are still breathing, because they are at a point where it's very difficult for the Holy Spirit to deal with them.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the one unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
Is blaspheming the Holy Spirit, which is knowing that something's wrong and doing it anyway, despite God telling you not to, and doing that for such a prolonged period that eventually he said, okay, if that's how you're going to live, then he departs from you. And that should terrify everyone.
Well, I want to go back to verse 25. It says they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. They tell you that if you these sins that is listed in the last from 26 to 31. If you call those sins out, they want to tell you that you're bigoted, you're hate, you're whatever, racist, whatever. Not so much racist in this, but bigoted and hateful. If you call those out, that's what you are. But yet, they tell people that if you want to be loving and tolerant, then you've got to accept this. And this is natural and this is normal. But yet we're seeing exactly, when you want to say that you don't believe in God, we're seeing exactly what he's writing about here.
Yeah, I mean, you can only push God away so many times before he leaves you to your own devices. Yeah. And we've seen how well human beings do when they're left to their own devices. It's like Lord of the Flies.
Yes, perfect example.
Just turn into utter depravity. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And the fact that like I said, the government could value you so little that they give you such a minute amount when you've suffered
you mean nothing to them.
Yeah. And you've got to think, I mean, place yourself in that position. You've lost everything. And then they come along and give you, a couple $100 and tell you, well, good luck.
Yeah.
Like, what a slap in the face.
Well, look at what they've done. I mean, by using our military as a police force. How bad can you be? Really, how evil can it be to know that you are putting people in harm's way? You're getting them killed. You're getting them maimed, whatever the case might be. And you're not doing it for anything in sight. Plus, also, too, you're putting on their conscience, however many kills they get. They got to live with that for the rest of their lives. And there's no object to win. You're just there to occupy. And if you remember, you go back to the 2000s, right after we got involved with, I'm not a big Democrat supporter. And of course they had their own reasons for this because they had no plan on ending it either. But they were still calling out the pink elephant in the room. And that was that, American forces were being used to occupy, and that's where Zell Miller got up and talked about American soldiers are not an occupying force. And I agree with that, but we had become an occupying force in Iraq.
Well, and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
When you're there for 2 decades,
Yeah.
you're not fighting a war, you are an occupying force.
And, yeah.
You're talking decades in.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, are there just wars? Yes. Are most of the wars we fight just? No.
No.
And therein lies the problem.
I don't think we fought a just war since World War II.
Probably not. I mean, but like I believe the Revolutionary War. No,
I'm not saying that was the only just war. I'm saying I don't think we have fought one since.
Oh no! Vietnam was a farce.
Yeah.
Korea.
Absolutely, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, War of 1812, World War I, World War II. Those were all just wars. After that,
and see the response. Of course, I'm going to get us sidetracked, but the response to World War I is what caused World War II.
Yes.
That could have been prevented.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson was told, go to Germany, fix their economy, don't leave it in shambles, because if you don't, someone will, and we don't know who that is.
Yeah, exactly. We beat them down and then stripped them of everything, and then didn't allow them to have a military.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to beat you and now you can't defend yourself at all. And when it takes a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread, I mean, of course people are going to look for a solution.
Yeah.
And the one they found was not the one we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what caused a whole nother, needless war with millions and millions of people dying.
Yeah. Well, no, absolutely. And but kind of, that's what I'm kind of, what we're talking about here today with all this stuff, still on topic. I mean, did God cause the fires in LA? The answer is no. But is God getting even with the people in LA? No, he's not. A lot of times, if we're not careful, we look back and we're going, well, why is God not doing such and such? Well, he is. But you've also got to realize that God set things into order upon the day of creation. And it's not that he doesn't intervene and he doesn't, but the things that would have to happen for some course correction to the point that we want it would require wiping people's memories and their slates completely clean, if you will, which God will not do, because who was it talks about basically that, and I'm paraphrasing this, but basically the sum of a man is or something is the sum of their experience, and meaning that everything that we experience is ultimately what molds us into who we are. So God doesn't just go and wipe all that away. But by that, he didn't just wipe away what Adam and Eve did in the sense of that, the fall and everything is gone. He did, however, provide the sacrificial lamb from the foundation of the earth to wipe away our sin. He did do that. But when you read here, you see, James says, where do wars come from? It comes from the greed in the hearts of men. And there he says that they have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. meaning that these wars like you're talking about that are not just, that's where they're coming from. The Vietnams, the Koreas, the Iraq, that came from greed. And look, you may be a George W. Bush fan, but at the end of the day, he did that to get back at Saddam Hussein and to try to get something oil-wise that America really, we didn't.
Well, and if you look into the backstory,
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein was a CIA plant.
Yeah.
You know, he was intended to keep Iran in check, which he did. And then we look at his removal and look at how it destabilized the region. I mean,
well, and again, I mean, the whole thing with Mena, Arkansas, that was another CIA plant.
yeah,
And we saw how that turned out. I mean, you almost had people like Colonel Oliver North getting the death penalty over it.
yeah. Well, there are a lot of shady figures that run the very top of the government. It's not the people you see.
Yeah.
It's the ones behind the curtain. And there's a lot of outright wickedness
Yeah.
that runs rampant.
Yeah.
And, you know, agencies that gloat about toppling governments become full of themselves.
Well, they get a godlike complex.
Yes.
Why? Because the Bible says that God raises governments and he brings down governments. So those that are thinking, hey, we're going to put in a Saddam Hussein, but then we're also going to remove him at will, you're just trying to play God.
Yeah.
And it goes right back to what he talks about where he says that they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the creator who is forever worthy of praise. It's man trying to be God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to, like you said, what got Satan thrown out of heaven.
Yeah.
And we're just, I say humanity is replicating that sin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And becoming overly confident in our own abilities.
I'm trying to remember who it was who said God created man in his image, but then Satan said, I'm going to recreate them in mine. Now, it's not that Satan has that much power, but he certainly tries to mold man. And you just said Satan can't create, but he certainly can try to replicate. And so he's just replicating what he did in heaven.
And look at how it works.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
the only difference is that there's redemption for humanity. There is not for fallen angels.
yeah, exactly. Which is why they have, I believe that's part of the reason they have such an intense hatred of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Is because for them there is no upward plight.
That's right.
Like they are eternally doomed and they know that. And the only way to get back at God is to try to take as many of us
That's right.
with them.
That's right. That's right. And that is what he's doing. And that, when you look at what he's doing with all of humanity and how he has, it is really a thing where mankind tries to say, well, we've got this. But again, I do want to say, when you look at, as I mentioned earlier, you've got the Gen Zers buying Bibles, taking them right off the shelf. Stores are saying that they can't even keep them in stock. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it takes things reaching a certain point before people open their eyes and look for a different solution.
That's right.
The night is always darkest right before daybreak.
Yeah.
Like right before the light. Sometimes things have to reach
A certain fever pitch.
Yeah. And people a lot of times have to reach rock bottom before they start to look up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, they do. And, it's like somebody that goes through AA, people that I've talked to that have went through it. They've all said I had to hit rock bottom before I got there. And it's the same thing with humanity, as far as many times before they ever return back to God and turn their face back to Him, they've got to hit rock bottom. And I do pray that, not that I want America to suffer, but I'm kind of going, I hope that is our rock. I hope we are at our rock bottom, because if it's not, I don't want to see what our rock bottom is.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to see people suffer and live in darkness. But on the flip side, if that's what it ultimately takes to save them, then, the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
Like, I would be God is far more concerned about your soul than your social well-being or your health.
He is. And
gotta swipe it. Sorry about that.
He is far more worried about that, and Satan is just far more concerned about getting you
off the right
track, because that's why the Bible tells us to lay aside every sin and weight which does so easily beset us. He would like to get you into hell. That's just kind of gravy for him. But if he can render you ineffective for the kingdom of heaven, he feels as though he's accomplished more. Because go back to what he says to Adam and then to also Jesus. Both people, both men. Did God say? He wasn't trying to convince them of anything other than, is God's word really God's word?
Well, and to plant a seed of doubt.
Yeah.
And then we as humans, when there's a seed of doubt, if you don't deal with it, it will grow.
Yeah.
And then you'll go, well, what about this or what about that? And you'll find yourself with no foundation.
Yeah.
Where you've concocted this whole view of the world where nothing is legitimate. There is no hope.
That's right.
And you'll spiral downwards.
Yeah. And that's all he's concerned with, is if he can get you in that downward spiral, then you're going to feel like, that's like when you go out and you get this temptation to sin. And in your mind, it gets to the point, because the temptation is not where you first start. It's once you start to think about it, and then you start to convince yourself why you need to be able to do this. And then once you give into it, I've got this pride, I got that. Once you give into it, then the condemnation starts, because that's all he needs to try to bring up that wall between you and God, to keep the fellowship between God and man, or God and you, from doing anything.
Yeah. Well, and temptation has become such a bad word, which it is. But remember that Jesus himself was tempted. Like, obviously he didn't fall for it, but you will be tempted.
Yeah.
There's no way around that.
Yeah.
It will happen. It's how you deal with it.
That's right.
That defines the outcome.
That's right. No, temptation will come. The Bible tells us that. But when temptation comes, James says that there's been a way of escape made. Temptation comes. It comes, but you don't have to succumb to it. You don't have to. Part of it is, as we were talking earlier this morning, is just, get your mind off of it. As a matter of fact, people want to talk about lust. Lust is a big temptation. The Bible tells us to flee it. Don't even try to fight it. Don't even start trying to throw, whatever it is you do. Don't fight it. Flee it. It's the only sin that we're commanded to flee.
Because if you look at pornography and how many billions of dollars it rakes in, it's because that is a major weakness for human beings, and Satan's found a way to exploit it, and you simply are not strong enough to fight it, which is where you have the tactical retreat.
Yeah.
You know, just go and get.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what it is. And you know, you if you try to stand and fight something like that, I think it was C.S. Lewis who said that lust is really just like a gnat that continues to fly around your head. The more you swat at it, the more it comes back. A lot of times you're just better off to keep walking. It will leave you alone. You know, move your position. I think he kind of puts it in the phrase of move your position, basically. Quit trying to swat at it, because, you know, and I thought, you know, that's a great analogy, but temptation is one of those things that it's going to come, but you know, we're commanded on, you know, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Submit yourselves to God. That is how all of that goes away. It's not, you know, while you're on this earth, you're not ever going to reach that point of, I'm never going to have a problem. I'm never going to have, you know, but you will reach that point where you're going to know that the mercy and grace of God will get you through it, you know, and I think that's what a lot of people, and again, I don't want to get off track. I mean, the whole point of this is no, before we start blaming God for the fires out in L.A., let's not go there. Let's look at how, you know, how's God trying to how's God trying to draw people to Him through this?
Yeah, well, God will take a bad situation and use it for your benefit and for His benefit. Maybe that's what it takes for someone to turn to Him.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at it, when you die, are you taking your home with you or your belongings? Ultimately, those, while we grow deeply attached to them, are irrelevant.
That's right.
In eternity. Mm-hmm. And so God is far more worried about the future of your soul than the future of your Audi or your BMW.
That's
or
going
your
to
home.
the junkyard anyway.
You know, all of and think about it, the home in which you live, someone likely lived in before.
Yeah.
The land that you, pretend to own, because if you don't pay taxes,
you don't own it.
But, you know, the property where you're living, someone lived there. Like,
before you did. Mm-hmm.
You inevitably will pass. All of your belongings will go on. Something I heard not too long ago was like, how many people can name all of their great-grandparents? Like, if you really sit there, do you know all their names? People and belongings become forgotten.
Yeah.
You don't become forgotten to God, but the world will go on.
Yeah.
So don't. Yes, it's an incredible tragedy to lose your belongings, but ultimately those are not the things that hold the greatest importance.
Well, I asked students, I think they were my eighth grade students, this week, if they had ever heard of the Holocaust and Adolf Hitler. No. The answer was no. You know, so you got something that prolific, and they've not heard about that. Just imagine how something that's even less significant as far as how much attention that obviously garnered, how horrible and the atrocity that was. They don't remember something like that. You know, I mean, like you said, I mean, you got people that are, you know, your house is going to be, you know, you may build a house that'll live on to be 150 years old, but you're going to be long forgotten.
Oh yeah. You'll have 5 generations that have come and gone in that house.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the average time people spend in homes, like our one of the homes next to us, God, how many people have moved in and out? It's like 3 or 4 at least. And that's only in, you know, what?
And you probably don't even remember the first or second neighbor you had in that neighborhood.
No.
So that's kind of what it, you know, it's kind of what you're saying there. You're not going to, and you know, you it's like people just don't understand. And, God does not rejoice in the suffering of humanity. He doesn't. He would never have sent his son to die on the cross if he rejoiced in the suffering of humanity. And I'm hoping that somebody's listening to this, maybe, but it's like, please don't let what's going on in California, metaphorically speaking, run the same kind of wildfire that they're getting what they deserve. I'm not saying that, God is not got a certain, he does have, but at the same time, God does not have to get even with us. God allows us to, God forbid, he turns people over to themselves, just as we read earlier in Romans.
Well, he allows you to sink or swim.
Yeah.
That's on you. God doesn't need anything from you.
No.
I mean, ultimately, he would prefer you to come to him, but in the end, it doesn't change who he is.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And don't take that. That's the attitude of the Pharisee, where these people are getting what they deserve.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not our judgment to make. The vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
I will repay.
Like, we cannot look at people who have done evil and then be glad when evil befalls them.
Yeah. Well, the Bible tells us not to rejoice when you see your enemy overtaken in evil, lest God sees and turns it away from them.
Yeah.
So, you do not rejoice in the suffering of people. God doesn't do it. He's trying to create us into his image. We start rejoicing in people suffering and getting even. God, first off, let's get something straight. God's not getting even because of you. That's not what he's doing. He's doing it to try to get that person. He loves them as much as he does you. He's trying to draw that person to him. Now, maybe they did do something, and you are a child of God, and yes, obviously that irritates. But at the end of the day, he's not even trying to do that to get even, so that you look better. He's doing that because he's trying to draw that person to them in correction. And that's what we've got to always remember, that it's ultimately it's correction, trying to draw people to him.
Yeah. Well, and even if you are saved now and you do your best to live a righteous life, at one point you were not. Mm-hmm. Would you want people reveling in your misfortune when you weren't saved?
Yeah.
Or even when you are? Would you want someone to revel in your misfortune? Yeah. Then certainly do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Regardless, we cannot look at it that way.
No. Well, 5 more weeks till we get to the 100th episode of the Exchange podcast. Some exciting news, some big news there. It's good because, a lot of podcasts don't make it, and thankfully we have. Thank you for all of you who've listened to us, but please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends about it. Continue to tune in here. We love doing the Exchange. Questions and comments in the comments section. Put it down there. Any topic that you might want to cover, any questions you might have. We're going into this new year. We're going to start. I've already got some ideas on how to line some more guests out. Those seem to the episodes that we've got guests seem to. We did one a few weeks ago with Darren English and some other ministers that I'm wanting to reach out to. And for the 100th episode, trying to work some details out there. Having a guest on that one, specifically for that one. But we're going to start bringing in some more people. We've got it figured out. And then also to still just working towards getting the camera angle working. And I rarely ever do this, but there are ways that if you want to financially support this exchange, because this podcast, content costs. It's not cheap. And whatever you donate, you will get a donation receipt for your taxes. And the money does not go into my pocket. It doesn't go into anyone's pocket. It goes to try to upgrade and bring the best content available that we can, because we always want to go for the best that we can. We want you guys to enjoy it, because while we're doing what we do with a ministry focus, there's also the entertainment aspect of it too. There's nothing wrong with it, with a little bit of entertainment that goes on something like this. But like, subscribe, share, tell your friends about it. Michael, what do you got for us?
Well, so something we talked about this morning is anxiety and depression. Those that don't have the peace of God will experience those things at greater rates.
Yeah.
Everyone has made it through something.
Yeah.
Use that to get others through.
That's right.
Extend that peace that you have
That's right.
to them, and it will have a cascading effect.
That's right.
You never know what influence you hold. And when you make it through and you see someone else suffering a similar situation, don't be afraid to extend yourself and tell them how you made it, because that could be, just real quick, in 2021, there were, I think it was 2021, there were 21 million Americans that had a major depressive episode. That is like in your life.
Yeah.
You never know what your act of kindness or that extension of friendship
Yeah. Someone
would do. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. People's lives are dirty. They're messy. Think about yours is not perfect. You have to be willing to get into the trenches.
Yeah.
But if you've been through a battle and you've come out on the other side, help someone who is currently in it.
Yeah.
And get them through. And then they in turn can do it for someone else. If we all adopted that attitude, think about the difference it would make.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And if you do want to give gifts, you would go to the Convergent City Church, Conway Convergent City Church website. There'll be a place to give a gift. Hit the scroll down. It'll have the Exchange podcast. And like I said, I mean, it goes to the podcast. It goes to upgrade it. Anyway, thank you for showing up this week. This has been a little bit of a different discussion, but that's okay. That's what our podcast is about. And again, like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you here hopefully next Saturday. You guys have a great week. Goodbye.